How's it going?
All right. Hi guys. Thanks for coming. Small group here. It'll be a nice and intimate talk. All of you know me pretty well, so I'll skip the introductions. Um, anyways, Native Americans have made innumerable significant contributions to the formation and success of America, many of which have gone without the proper deserved recognition. They've historically undergone extreme prejudice, beginning with white colonization in the 15th century, and which on some level continues to this very day. They've fallen victim to oppression and stereotypes over the centuries. Again, some of which persist to this day. And they've even survived genocidal attempts and the destruction of the natural world that they heavily depended upon in the past. And as I mentioned, most of their misfortunes persist in modern America. And they go unnoticed and uncorrected by a lot of the general population. Nevertheless, the Native American story is one that I think is absolutely worth telling. They were integral to the formative years of America, aiding many of the white colonizers to adjust to the new and inhospitable environment. Without them, I don't think America would be what it has become today. Anyways, this spring I've been collaborating with Mr. Flaska on this independent study in the creation and design of a course that will bring attention to many of the prominent Native American historical figures in America, as well as focusing on some of the cultural and spiritual Native American ways. Individuals such as Sherman Alexie, who's a contemporary Native American author, comedian, and film producer, will be studied, as well as the Native American writer and Reverend William Apess, who is historically given credit for having one of the first Native American autobiographies generally known. The course will describe the history of Native Americans and their contributions to particularly northeastern America and New England region, as well as southeastern Canada, giving particular emphasis to Native American culture and spirituality in these places. Modern Native American reservations will also be focused on, such as the living conditions that are there, a lot of the social, economic problems, and prominent issues that are on them today. So I'll go ahead and get started. One of the things, the individuals that we're going to focus on was William Apess, as I mentioned, who provides a very insightful primary source. He has a very distinct and important perspective as an educated Native American. He came from a time where personal accounts from Native Americans were very scarce, and provides a voice that's generally unheard by the American public. Unfortunately, Native Americans weren't very well educated at the time. They weren't capable of reading or writing for the most part. And William Apess was an exception to that. And he provided an autobiography of his travels as a minister and reverend, and he is generally given credit for having started the Marshby Revolt of 1733 and 34, which took place on modern-day Cape Cod, and it's generally seen as one of the first Native American civil rights movements. Almost, it was an incident where Marshby Native Americans felt as though they were having white beliefs imposed on them. Their sovereignty was coming into question, and they felt like they were being oppressed. And so William Apess was kind of the spearhead of the whole movement, and he combated, if you will, like some scholars from Harvard who were trying to convert many of the Native Americans. And though it was a peaceful rebellion, if you will, it was also very important at the time. And it gained William Apess some notoriety in the time. But he's also generally unbeknownst by the modern day public, even though I think he's a very important historical figure in Native American kind of civil rights movement. Anyways, I'm going to quote Barry O'Connell, who wrote the introduction to William Apess's autobiography, which is entitled On Our Own Ground. And he says, when Native Americans appear, either in the histories or in literature, they do so in predictable and restricted guises as remnants, a doomed race, or obstacles to the conquest and settlement of the wilderness, as barbaric savages, or alternately as the noble savage, too pure and Edenic to service other than in white people's nostalgia and regret for a lost world of human and natural harmony. They are always, in effect, defined as outside the shaping forces of what becomes America. Furthermore, he continues to say, it's not fanciful to see William Apess as one of the earliest indigenous leaders on an Indian rights movement. The near disappearance in historical consciousness of this important movement should be a reminder of how continuously Euro-Americans have marginalized Native Americans and effectively deflected the troubling facts of an equally persistent exploitation, referring to white colonization in Native America and some of the genocidal attempts that were committed against Native Americans. He argues that the voice of the persecuted Indian has historically been suppressed and twisted by white society to imply subordination and irrelevance, just insignificance. And William Apess obviously would disagree, as would I. We're going to continue on to the next individual, whose name is Sherman Alexie. He is an award-winning author, a comedian, and a film producer. His first and arguably most significant work is called The Lone Ranger and Tonto, Fist Fight in Heaven, which is an anthology of short stories about Native American Spokane Indian named Victor Joseph, who lives on the Coeur d'Alene Indian Reservation. And this anthology is partially autobiographical as well. It tells a lot of the stories about Sherman Alexie's life growing up on a reservation, dealing with the prevalent alcoholism and the social problems that are unfortunately present on Native American reservations. I was thinking that would be one of the resources we'd use. He has a number of other very good and widely known books, one of which is entitled The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, which is also partially autobiographical and tells the story of a young Native boy who goes to school off the reservation and is where he's kind of ostracized by his peers there, by his peers there, and kind of seen as different on the Native reservation because of the fact that he's going to school among whites, and then outside in school where he's seen as Native and therefore different. And he just deals with a lot of the very prevalent and realistic problems that exist on Native American reservations today. Unfortunately, I can attest to a lot of these. I've seen firsthand this sort of metaphorical downward spiral that you fall into as an adolescent growing up on a reservation. You feel pressure not to leave, in fear of forsaking your culture and heritage. And, you feel like if you stay, there's a lack of opportunity there. People fall into are very prevalent to fall into self-destructive habits such as alcoholism, narcotic abuse, things like that. There's just a general lack of opportunity on the reservation. So I think Sherman Alexie does an excellent job acknowledging a lot of these problems, and he kind of gives evidence as to where most of the stereotypes come from about natives, unfortunately being seen as lazy or drunks. And I won't get into that, but anyways, obviously I myself am Native American as well. I'm a Mohawk Indian. I live in Kahnawake, Quebec, which is a Mohawk reservation just outside of Montreal. It's where I grew up. It's where I currently live, outside of Deerfield. And as I said, I can attest to many of these problems. We'll also be talking about, the Native American tie to Deerfield Academy specifically, going into the John Williams book, Their Deemed Captive Returning to Zion, that kind of talks about the 1703-1704 Deerfield Massacre and Raid. Just an interesting story, I'm sure. Most of you are aware, but I'm not sure if you saw that.
We sat at a sit-down table together.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Right. Anyways, I'll skip that. Anyways, we're going to talk about, the kind of the links between Native Americans and Kahnawake, which is the reservation I live on, and how they're the same perpetrating Indians that came down and committed the raid. And part of that would involve Mr. Flaska coming up to Kahnawake, which is where I live, he'll be teaching the class, so I think it's important that he witnesses firsthand how things are on a Native American reservation, in modern Canada, I guess, if you will, but it's a pretty typical reservation, so we saw it as fitting. Some of the proposed places of interest included the Kahnawake Cultural Center, which is a museum and kind of cultural exhibit that shows, they give like guided tours and such, and just provide very insightful kind of overview of Kahnawake as a reservation, how it works, like a lot of the history behind it. Another place that I was going to take Mr. Flaska was it's also associated with the Cultural Center, but it's the Rati Lanier Language Immersion Program. And what that is it's an all Mohawk, school where they're trying to teach proficiency in Mohawk as a dying language. It's trying to be revived, and the Lanier program is making an effort to educate people with Mohawk language. So that's going to be going on all summer. I was planning on taking Mr. Flaska there. There's the Garinuha Elementary School, which is also very similar. It's an elementary school, which unfortunately won't be in session while we're there this summer. But I'm sure they would be happy to have Mr. Flaska for a tour to see the kind of the educational facilities in Kahnawake. And also it's another school that's Mohawk immersion in an attempt to revitalize the language, bring it back to the forefront. And then kind of afterwards we're going to go to the Kahnawake Survival School, which is the high school in Kahnawake, and kind of witness firsthand what I'm talking about. Not so much about the lack of opportunities, that's not what I mean, but there will be summer school in session, so he'll be able to see how schools like kind of contrast between Deerfield and a public school like on a Native American reservation. We're going to visit the governing body in Kahnawake, which is called the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, or MCK, and they're very busy, so I wouldn't doubt that we'd be able to sit on like a community meeting or one of the decision-making processes or something, because that's kind of in essence the town hall of Kahnawake, like where all of the politics and such, go down. And then one of the potentially most enlightening stops in the visit to Kahnawake would be the 207 Longhouse, which is a place of spirituality on the reservation where it's kind of the traditional religion, if you will. And it all happens in the Longhouse. And they would be more than happy to welcome Mr. Flaska and myself, obviously, to one of the ceremonies that take place in mid-June. So we're going to bring him there and show him, what the spiritual life of, Native American, like, traditionally is. And that's about it. We'll open the floor to questions.
Sheer support.
Mr. Rosani.
So, thank you, Jordan. Do you have a reading list, a bibliography of sources that you study this term?
Yeah. I have it on my computer over there. I didn't print it out as part of the speech background, but I'd be happy to provide it.
So you'll submit that along with your text?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have a 10-page kind of, I don't know, culminating paper that summarizes all the work that I've done thus far in the presentation that I was willing to submit to Mr. Flaska sometime before Wednesday.
You know, if you could copy me on that.
Yeah,
would be great.
absolutely.
So feel free to interrupt with other questions if you have them. I don't mean to monopolize the airwaves, but I do have some questions.
Yeah.
So first, spirituality. What are the salient elements of Native American spirituality?
Well, traditionally, we have a lot of respect, as a culture for the land around us. We're a culture oriented around reciprocity and kind of just a mutual respect for one another. Therefore, those are a lot of the values that they preach. I guess in the Longhouse is respect for the natural world around us, but as well as like our social relationships with the people around us. Just mutual respect, I'd say, is probably the most salient element. Does that answer your question?
So how would that be different from the respect that we try to?
I suppose it wouldn't. Like, I don't consider myself, extremely like traditionally religious. I have obviously gone to the Longhouse myself, but they just have much more emphasis on the natural world, I'd say, and respect for the planet and elders, and it's a matriarchal society. So I don't know. It's not that much different. I mean, if you want to get into technicalities and specificities, obviously there are legends and folklore that are like associated with Native American, religion, creation stories, and whatnot, and different legends and folklore, like I said. But as far as the values go, I would say that the principal values are roughly the same.
And I'd just like to say that in terms of it being different, knowing Jordan for all this time, I kind of expected it to be a lot different, and I think that it's good to educate kids how it's not how we would think that living on a reservation would be so much different from our lives, and I think it's important to emphasize that it's really not. And in terms of religion, I think that was just showed well through what he said.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what it is that a Christian or a Jew could learn from Native American religion. What would we notice and say, wow, that's really extends my view of how people should be with each other?
Like I said, I mean, traditionally we come from a very close knit and small community, and I'd say the reciprocal respect that's expected of everybody is just different there. It's I guess kind of, I don't know, phrased in elementary terms. It's do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but it's so much more profound when it's like on so much smaller level, and you seem to like know everybody, and there's kind of a restorative. I don't know, but like when it's difficult to explain, I suppose. I mean, I guess it depends on the individual. I don't think everybody would go to the Longhouse and automatically be changed or experience some type of spiritual epiphany. I suppose it's just more respect oriented as opposed to like having a set of like 10 commandments per se, and you follow them, you obey them, and that's just how it is. It's not so much oriented around rules and structure. It's just giving thanks and respect and just being like appreciative for what you have already instead of, I don't know, I guess desiring for more.
Can anyone go to the Longhouse? Could I go, or do I have to be?
If you wanted to, yes. There are certain like Longhouse kind of organizations that are much more exclusive, unfortunately, and not every single ceremony can be attended by just anybody. But generally speaking, there are Longhouse try and educate them about the culture and keep it alive and so they can have them.
Feel free to chime in again.
These guys have been hearing about it all spring. I've been telling them, keeping them updated, more or less.
So why the image of Native Americans having narcotic and alcohol abuse problems? Is there some truth to that? And if so, what's going on there? What are the factors that are driving that?
Unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely true. Like I said, I grew up on a Native American reservation. I've seen it firsthand. Luckily, not with my family, or any of my close family or friends, but I've witnessed it. It's just a different mindset kind of. It's almost frowned upon to leave and pursue greater opportunity and better yourself personally. It's like there's just kind of the mentality that once you're old enough, you never leave the reservation, and it's just totally different to do anything else, and that kind of mentality I think is where it begins, because the reality of the fact is that a lot of reservations are very isolated. Not mine specifically, because I'm just 20 minutes outside of Montreal, but many, and especially the Western United States and Northern Canada are very, very isolated, and there's literally just nothing to do there, and they don't put very much emphasis on their school and academics, and so it's just kind of a habitual thing where you grow up drinking on your dad's lap. I guess historically it can be rooted back to when the colonizers came and they brought alcohol with them. Native Americans would consume it kind of like religiously, almost, because they thought that it helped them achieve these so-called vision quests, which they would take off into the woods, and they'd go days and days without eating or drinking, and kind of just be exhausted, and then they would literally hallucinate. And anyways, they thought that alcohol supposedly aided them in realizing these vision quests. And so that's kind of, I guess, where it started. It became very prominent and valued in Native American culture and society, unfortunately. And then it just became, I guess, a genealogical thing where it got passed down, across the generations. And alcohol abuse is very, very prevalent nowadays. I wish I had some statistics on hand, but alcoholism is much more prevalent. Narcotic abuse is. It's really legitimately sad.
So I'm hearing that it's habituated a bit, that I learn on my father's lap and my son will learn on my lap. I'm also hearing that the prospects for betterment are few, especially since school is de-emphasized.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing there's a sense that you're kind of trapped there, that you're an outcast if you leave. Is that
more or less
my
yeah.
word? But
I'll reiterate. I guess there's kind of how I see it is there's almost like a downward spiral. As you fall into it, you kind of just become engulfed in reservation life, and it's almost like I said, it's frowned upon if you leave, because they all see you as a deserter. They see it as abandonment of your people and culture. When in reality, all it is pursuing higher education and opportunity. But I suppose it's just easier. It's easier to follow the life of your peers and just fall by the wayside and drop out of school, and just engage in the self-destructive behaviors that so many Native adolescents do, unfortunately.
so what's your standing back in your community? I mean, you left, you came here. Are you welcome to come back, or are you considered a little suspicious at this point?
I'm not suspicious. I mean, I've kind of committed myself to helping, I guess, my people, if you will, as Native Americans, kind of throughout my life, and I acknowledge that I'll definitely return there one day. It's my home, and I don't think people look at me with contempt. I mean, I went to high school before Deerfield in Montreal, so it's not like it was an outrageously big transition to just straight up leave and go to Deerfield. And I still live there. I still go there in the summer, and I know more than my fair share of people. So I don't hold Ganawage or the people that live there, with any contempt. And it's almost.
I'm more worried about the other way around. They might.
Yeah, well,
hold
I
you
mean,
in
I don't know. I can't speak. I can't speak for the people my age, but I certainly don't get any outright. I don't know, comments or anything of resentment. I like to think that I'd be completely accepted if I went back. But
So my last question is, in this course that Mr. Flask is going to offer next spring or next year?
I'm not entirely sure of the exact technicalities. I think it's next spring. It would be a one-term course.
Is there some thought of taking a field trip up to the reservation?
There is, yeah. There has been talk about it. Potentially to take the students up and have them, maybe sit in on classes at Ganawage Survival School, or take the same trip itinerary that Mr. Flaska is going to be taking this coming summer. We haven't spoken explicitly about like scheduling that kind of yet, but I kind of anticipate we'll resolve that, I guess, when he comes to Ganawage, and he'll kind of make the assessment whether or not it's something he would be comfortable sharing with students, as a first-hand opportunity for them.
Yeah, I mean, it might be nice to, if students here are going to study your culture, it'd be nice to see it on the ground, and maybe even to interact with it in some way, or maybe even servants.
Personally, I think it's an awesome idea. I mean, it's hard to know and learn about what it's like, on a Mon reservation without actually being there. Like I said, mine is I suppose a typical Native American reservation in the sense that you'll see a lot of the things I'm talking about there. It's just very different, but it's not different physically. Like Daniel said, it's like you wouldn't be able to tell that you're necessarily on a reservation. It's just very socially different, and I don't know, as far as the traditions go, it's very different, and I think it would be very valuable for students as kind of for them to witness it firsthand. There's no other way to experience it other than going there.
I visited over spring break.
Yeah.
I mean, I had heard a lot about the reservation from Jordan, so I get talking about it, telling stories and stuff, but like it definitely enhanced my perspective when I visited. He drove me around and showed me a bunch of different sites that he talked about. It's pretty cool. So.
Were you able to engage with the community at all?
No, not really much. We didn't have
He
too
was
much
only
time.
there for like an afternoon. It wasn't a prolonged kind of visit that we might have wanted for. Cam O'Connell came to my house for 3 or 4 days, and so he kind of got to see more of what it's like to be there for more than just an afternoon. So I suppose he'd be able to provide kind of the perspective that maybe Chris lacks, but yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm completely open to it. I think it'd be a great experience for them, and also for the community to host someone from outside. It would be great for them to take pride in kind of their culture and teaching other people.
I mean, also coming back to the one question about how they wouldn't maybe accept you as readily as if you had not left the reservation. I mean, I visited Navajo reservations in Arizona and stuff, and I feel like going to Ganawage because due to its proximity to the city and how I guess I mean it's basically a suburb of Montreal, and I feel like culture is maybe a little bit different just due to its location. So I'd say I might have an easier time accepting her.
Yeah, in Ganawage, it's much more of a diverse place than you would traditionally see on other reservations. Like I've also been to reservations in Arizona, like Hopi reservations, that they're literally like third world countries where it's like there's no electricity, there's no like running water, and they live in literally shacks, and it's really sad, and it's like I couldn't imagine being brought up there. It's really impossible to leave and better yourself when your parents don't care, your teachers don't care. It's like just kind of like it's literally hopeless. There's no other like way to describe it. and I was lucky enough to be brought up on a reservation that's not like that at all. That's why I don't really hold it against a lot of Native Americans for falling into some of the prevalent problems that come up, because it's not like all their fault. It's a combination of factors that are just overwhelming.
So the three books that you cited, William Mapes and the Sherman Alexie and then the John Williams, did you read those for this course that you just directed study?
Yep.
Would you recommend that students next year read all three?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that they read all three. I didn't read the entirety of the William Mapes book, but in the 10-page summary, I kind of specify which sections of his autobiography would be most, I guess, constructive, if you will. And the introduction is great. There's a section, specifically pertaining to the Marshby Revolt, because it's a compilation of a lot of his different, writings and stuff. But I kind of focused on the Marshby Revolt, and then also related to that was a book by Geraldine Brooks that I read previously called Caleb's Crossing. That's also about the same Native Americans, the Wampanoags, that are located very close to the Marshby Reservation. And I was thinking that could potentially be a book that the class next year reads, as well as Sherman Alexie's Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven. I also saw the movie Smoke Signals, which is kind of an on-screen adaptation of the anthology, and so I thought that would be something that they could see as well. Movie there, numerous films that kind of depict
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What? What'd you say? Insightful stuff there. Hey, Mr. Fosca.